All over the world, all through history, groups in power have caused grievous wounds to nations, to ethnic groups, to people not in power. When it comes time to heal from those wounds, to recover our humanity after the mass murders that have taken place, there are different ways to approach that healing. All involve acknowledgement. This happened. In places where the wound is ignored, where the atrocities are unacknowledged, then just like a physical body wound, the situation festers and never heals. If the acknowledgement happens soon enough, it is possible to have retributive justice. The example we know best of this are the Nuremberg trials of the Nazi war criminals after World War II. In this case, the actual perpetrators can be held accountable. But most often, too much time has passed for that. We're into the next generations, and so we look to restorative justice, in which the inheritors of the sins of the fathers apologize and make amends for what their forebears did. That's what's happening in this morning's scripture when they confess their sins and the iniquities of their ancestors. We have modern examples of restorative justice in South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission after apartheid was ended in 1994. And another example is the 1993 apology of the United Church of Christ to the native Hawaiians for their part in helping to overthrow the monarchy in 1893. The entire process of restorative justice includes witnessing, that is, hearing the stories of what happened, a formal apology, which signals not only that this happened, but we, the children of those who wronged your ancestors, take responsibility for making it right. And the last part is redress or reparations. What happens when a grievous wound goes unacknowledged can be illustrated by the Armenian genocide. Between 1914 and 1923, Turkey exterminated 1.5 million Armenians, and Armenia is not that big a country to start with. It's the second most widely studied and documented genocide in the world after the Holocaust. As of 2019, 32 countries, including the US, have recognized the events of that time as genocide. Turkey has not. I probably wouldn't have known about all this except for my friend Jim Gertmanian, an Oberlin classmate, career congregational minister in Minneapolis, and a proud Armenian. His passion around this issue made me realize that the festering really does last, and it gets passed on from generation to generation. Witnessing, apologizing, reparations. The first two don't cost much, but they are crucial. In saying this, I'm going back to a paper published in 2007 in all places, of all places, in Science, which is a journal of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, published weekly, and is the place where you put out announcements of discoveries so that all around the world people can track those. This particular paper is titled Sacred Barriers to Conflict Resolution, and it reports the results of research done in the Middle East to explore what it would take to bring both Israel and Palestine to the negotiation table to talk to each other about peace. The authors had access to leaders on both sides, to the leader of Hamas, to both Sharon and Netanyahu, as well as a bunch of other ones, and they had prepared a list of possible compromises, of concessions, of material trade-offs like land or money, and also symbolic concessions like apologies. And then they quote, measured emotional outrage in response to peace deals involving each of these compromises. So basically, go down the list, and what would you think of a compromise that involved, giving back this land? And then they got a response from the leaders. What they got was no, or no with outrage, until they got to the option of recognition of sacred values. Sacred values are things like commitment to your family, your country, your religious beliefs. They're those intangibles that we have seen matter more to people in some very deep way than the material benefits. And what they got when they got down to the options involving sacred values was they didn't quite get yes all the way to peace, but they got a maybe or a yes but. They got things like Marzouk of Hamas said, yes, an apology is important, but only as a beginning. It's not enough because our houses and land were taken from us and something has to be done about that. And Netanyahu of Israel said, yes, but the Palestinians would have to show that they sincerely mean it, change their textbooks and anti-Semitic characterizations. But what the authors documented is that the recognition of the opponent's sacred values, while not sufficient in itself to bring about peace, can open a way to sit down and begin the discussions, a way where there seemed like there wasn't one before. And their conclusion in the paper said, symbolic concessions of no apparent material benefit may be key in helping to solve seemingly intractable conflicts. So the witnessing and the apologizing are in this category of recognizing the sacred values that people hold most deeply. We in the United States of America have our own grievous wound. In our history of slavery and the systematic exploitation and oppression of slavery's descendants. In the Black Lives Matter movement, we are seeing a call for national acknowledgement and healing. It's as if people are saying, enough. We, black and white, don't want to live like this anymore. It's not unanimous, of course, but can't wait for that. The universe moves in very interesting ways. This right here is where I had stopped writing the first draft of this message. That's as far as I got. And I set aside Thursday morning last week to finish this, okay? So Thursday morning I get up, I'm like, I make my coffee and I look at my email queue and I glance over the headlines and look what I found. Asheville, North Carolina, approves steps toward reparations for Black residents. The City Council unanimously approved a resolution apologizing for the local government's historic role in slavery and for participating in racist and discriminatory policies that have led to oppression. Went on to say that the reparations will take the form of financial investment in programs to specifically benefit the city's Black residents in education, home ownership, public transportation, healthcare. The article also mentioned that Evanston, Illinois created a reparations fund for its Black residents last November, using their new windfall, get this, of cannabis tax revenue. The first $10 million of marijuana taxes will be allocated to the fund. That is a brilliant idea, right? Because the problem with reparations is at the city level is that nobody ever has any money. But here comes this unexpected windfall taxing marijuana. That was a brilliant idea. This gives me hope. With more people acknowledging the history, getting themselves educated, and then doing something local, it could happen. When enough people get behind an idea in this country, change can happen. In different times, one could imagine our own version of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a nation. But as it is, and with the state governments overwhelmed dealing with the pandemic, it falls to the local city governments to take action. These examples are terrific models for that. I believe that the sins of the fathers is our inheritance, but that it doesn't have to be our legacy. We don't have to pass on what we got. We could change it. This could be the time when sins of the fathers get transformed into blessings for the children.